Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where our entire focus is helping commercial janitorial contractors succeed. You want a growing company, a thriving team, and healthy profits, and we are here to help. My name is Jordan Tong. I'm the founder of Elite BSC, a company dedicated to helping janitorial companies grow and thrive. I also serve as CEO and one of the owners of France Building Services. France is a janitorial company employing nearly 600 people. Since 2007, we grew from 1.5 million to more than 20 million in annual revenue and built what I think is one of the best teams in the world. The goal of Elite BSC in this podcast is to give owners in the industry a vision of where their company can be and the information and tools to get there. I want to share what I have learned over the years to make this a reality for you. Hey cleaning contractors, it's Jordan Tong, your host. So today we're going to be talking about estimating work hours. When you put together bids and you have to submit a proposal, one of the things that you need, first of all, to be able to get your price, to calculate your price, is to know how many hours it's going to take to work on that particular job. So we're going to cover that today. So just real quickly, the information we're going to talk about today, we're hosting a workshop, a live workshop, on June 6th and 7th, and the live portion actually is there's a reception on the 5th for that, and we're going to be talking about stuff like this. So it's a commercial janitorial company. It's a growth workshop. So we'll talk about the sales and marketing process, bidding and estimating, submitting proposals, that sort of thing. There is a live stream option that you can check out. We had a lot of people that were requesting that and asking for it, and so we wanted to make that available as well. There are obviously some perks to coming in person. One of those being that you get recordings of the actual event that you can utilize with your team at a later date. So check that out. If you go to elitebsc.com and look at the member tab and then click live workshops, you'll be able to see information for that on there. Also, I would greatly appreciate if you would like and maybe even leave a comment or review for the podcast on your podcast platform. It's so helpful and helps improve rankings and that sort of thing for this. We can get the word out in our industry. It'd be awesome. I would appreciate it. So today, the topic is making sure we have how to get accurate work hour estimates. How do you get accuracy when you're trying to figure out how many hours is it going to take to clean in this particular building? So I remember my first job out of college. So my degree was in civil engineering. My first job was working for a large construction company, and I was an estimator for them. And what we did, our company that I worked for, we were a grading and utility company. So basically what that meant is, let's say a large subdivision is going to get developed. We would go in and push all the dirt around to get it to look like it's supposed to, and then we would install water lines and sewer lines and storm drain lines, and then we would build the roads and pave the roads and that sort of thing. So we did all of the infrastructure to whatever was being built. We laid the groundwork for it. And it was really difficult for me. It was sort of how I cut my teeth learning how to estimate, trying to figure out, how in the world do you calculate how long it's going to take to run a sewer line, 4,000 feet or whatever, and with varying depths, and sometimes there's rock and sometimes there's not rock, and there's different fittings and different, challenges with it. And so learning that was a challenge for me. And one of the things I learned about bidding and estimating is it's not always super precise, which is why we call it an estimate. It's an approximation. But just like with anything, any form of knowing, our approximations can get better and better over time. And so as you look at our industry, when you think about putting a bid together, the largest factor in what determines our price is the number of man hours that we have. So yes, pay rate is maybe secondary to that, and probably profit margin is probably the third most significant factor in what's going to determine your price. And then from there, it's going to be equipment and supplies and some other minor things. But labor hours far and away are the determining factor. That's what, if you win or lose a bid, often it's because of how many labor hours you put in. And so getting that number as accurate as possible is important. And so the question I want to ask is, how do we get that number? How do we know how many hours should be in a given building? Because all buildings are so different, right? So you have some buildings that are, let's say, a medical facility that has inpatient rooms where they're doing maybe like little minor procedures and taking care of patients in rooms that require a decent level of service and disinfecting and that sort of thing, and a lot of hard surface floors. And you could have a really slow cleaning rate on something like that. But also you could have a lightly, of not very dense office building that is really spread out, that requires half the time to clean from a square foot standpoint. And so we just need to be, have a good methodology for how we do this sort of thing. So we're going to look at a few methods for how to do this, and I really have in mind four different ways, you could say, of calculating work hours. And the first two are sort of gimmies. they're the easy ones. So let's say that somebody gives you an RFP to work or to bid a bid on their project. And often this RFP is going to provide a lot of information and about the services you have to offer and that sort of thing. And sometimes they give you a work hour estimate. So they may put on there 6 full-time people on first shift and 4 full-time people on second shift or whatever. I mean, we have seen RFPs that look like that. Now, and that's great. Like it's helpful. It definitely brings parity to everybody that's bidding on the job. But that being said, that is never the end all be all, because everybody's going to be looking at that thinking, okay, now how am I going to gain a competitive advantage against the other people that I'm bidding against? And one of those is going to be to come up with some sort of innovative way to reduce man hours. And so that obviously doesn't, give you the exact amount of hours you should be working, but it does give you a ballpark of what the customer is expecting, and that's helpful. And the reason this is helpful sometimes too is you're not going to be able to go in and tour every square inch of a facility. So sometimes getting some of this information is really helpful. I would just submit to you that particularly in large facilities, you are definitely not going to get to look at every single space that you're going to have to clean. Okay, so number 2 is getting the RFP and that having some information. Let's call that easy method number 1. Easy method number 2 is to ask the contact person. So let's say that you're going on a facility tour. Ideally, this is best if you're by yourself with the person, but that doesn't have to be the case. So you could say something like to the person walking, do you know how many people your current vendor has on site? Or are most of these people full-time or part-time? Or in your opinion, does the current vendor have enough people to perform the work? So these sorts of questions are you're trying to chip away at your contact person to get a little bit of information. Sometimes they're going to be, they love the process and being, really tight on it, and so they're not going to budge and give you anything. But sometimes they're ready to talk. I think they got 4 or 5 people there. Oh, really? Okay. Are those full-time or part-time? Well, I know 2 of them are full-time, and I know there's a couple part-time people in the evening. Not sure about the other one. Well, okay, that doesn't give you all the information, but it sure puts you in the ballpark. And let you know as you calculate hours whether or not you're really close to what's currently being done. So we'll call this easy method number 2. That you get the information that you're looking for from the contact person. So let's move on to the 2 methods that require a little bit more effort on our end. And these are actually calculating the work hours yourself based on information that you know about the facility. So let's say that you're not getting, hey, it's going to be, 10 hours, 12 hours, 40 hours, 60 hours. You're not getting that from the RFP or from the contact person. So there's 2 different ways that you can do this. So one is, we'll call it the micro methodology, and the other is the macro methodology. So on and both of these are based on square footage. So the micro methodology is like, all right, we're going to calculate the square footage of the building, and then we're going to go and we're going to build the estimate piece by piece. So I'm going to have X amount of hours dusting. I'm going to have X amount of hours vacuuming. I'm going to have X amount of hours, whatever the case may be. This is how I started bidding stuff in the construction industry. This is how I started bidding in the cleaning industry. But what I ended up finding over time, so you're obviously hearing my opinion on this now, is that while this is helpful, and actually I think everyone should start out doing this at least a little bit to get your hands around how to bid in our industry. But you're going to end up, I remember the first few times I put together some bids and I started like calculating all the individual tasks. I ended up with some number that was, ridiculously high in terms of the total number of hours. And I'm like, well, that's not right. And I would find myself over and over slashing my hours to get it in line with what I intuitively knew would be the case in the facility. So there's ISSA puts out some cleaning time like standards, and there's also some other, bidding sites. Team Software has a bidding and estimating. There's some other stuff in our industry. I think this is fine. I think it's a good place to start. But I've just found it unhelpful. Unless you have gone out in your buildings and observed your people and timed your people performing work and taken measurements and seen, okay, this is a 20,000 square foot carpeted space. How long does it take us to vacuum? How long does it take us to empty trash? Like, until you have done that for various types of facilities, I think this micro methodology is honestly not as accurate as, we'll call it the macro or less labor intensive estimate. And I think it's really difficult to know what time should be unless you actually went out and observed that sort of thing yourself. So the macro methodology is, and this is the way I would bid on a job now, is that you get the total square footage of a facility, and then you look at what is your cleaning rate in other facilities that are similar to this one. So, for instance, let's say it's a medical facility, and it's 25,000 square feet. And let's say that in medical facilities, let's say you've got 4 other medical facilities, and the square footage of them, and you know how long it takes you to clean them, and you know that on average you get about 2,000 square feet an hour. Well, that means on this building it's going to be about 12 and a half hours to clean. And you know that because of you're comparing to other buildings that are similar to it. Now, it's going to be a little bit tricky if you're doing something brand new and out of the box that you've never done before, but you can at least make some comparisons. And this is pretty accurate. So, like, let's say even in a manufacturing plant, which may be the hardest kind of job to bid if they don't give you information, because you're trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how long is it going to take me to clean all these restrooms in a morning and do it twice and empty? What about emptying that trash on the plant floor? Trash cans interspersed. So those might be a little bit more challenging. But even in those cases, you could quantify, total amount of office space and get an idea for how long it takes you to clean office space, and then use that factor in coming up with your estimate. So I think this is a great way to do it. This is, I don't bid anymore, but if I did, this is exactly what I would do, and I would do it every single time. And then once I came up with those numbers, then I would start to sharpen my pencil a little bit on, I would know about where my hours need to be, and then I could start looking at the other things like pay rates and equipment and supplies and, that sort of stuff. So this may raise a final question, is how do we get square footage of facilities? So, I think square footage is the number one thing that you need to know in order to calculate work hours, unless they give you the amount of work hours. And this can be stressful, particularly if you're just starting. So I've got 4 methodologies that I could recommend here. So the first one is the cheating method, and if you can do this, that's great. So is just ask the contact person, like, hey, do you know how much square footage is in this building? Or maybe do you have drawings of the facility, like a blueprint? That would be awesome if we could see that. and that gives you exact square footage, so there's not a lot of guessing. If you ask somebody, though, you want to be careful. If they may just give you a roundabout number, and they may or may not, depending on the confidence level that they have, know that that's right. The second method that you could do, and this is the more or most labor intensive, and I sort of chuckle when I see people doing this because I used to do it myself, is when people using a measuring tool or pacing off literally every single space in the entire building. I remember doing this. I would go through walkthroughs and I would literally measure every single room. And I would have 4 and 5 pages of notes, calculating, adding up all of the various square footages in a particular space. And this is, you can always tell when you're in a walkthrough with multiple people, like the newbie is the one that's measuring every space just because they don't have their hands around it yet. But that is one option, and I'm not saying that it's bad or wrong. I just don't think it's necessary. So the final two that we use is one, and I've done this a bunch, is after or before I go into the facility or after I go into the facility, I'll just pace off the perimeter of the building. So if it's a square building, I'll get a approximate length and width, and so I know about what my stride is. I know what it feels like to walk 3 feet at a time, and so I'll just, I'll calculate that. Like I'll do a length and a width and multiply it and come up with some dimensions. And then my only challenge after that is when I get inside the facility, I just need to eliminate the spaces that are not cleaned. So maybe there's a 50,000 square foot building. I've paced it off on the outside, and inside, let's say, most of it's cleanable, but there's a 5,000 square feet of an IT room that we're not going to clean. So I'll know that's 50,000 minus 5,000, 45,000 total cleanable square footage. So that eliminates so much of the measuring, and all I got to worry about is the non-cleanable spaces on the inside. The last method is even easier than the pacing off, and this is to use something like Google Maps, Google Earth. You can also use various PVA websites that sometimes have a measuring tool. And you can just zoom right in on a building and use like the measuring tool that's on the whatever platform you're using, and just like and measure it. And Google Earth is actually pretty accurate on that. So and PVA websites are good too. I've used those. So what's cool about this? So we did a workshop a while back on bidding and estimating, and Jeff, who sort of facilitates the workshops and does a lot of the teaching, and he was our sales rep here for quite some time. He took our building here, that our corporate office that we have, and he did these various methodologies. So he actually used a measuring tool to go in and measure all the cleanable spaces. So he came to me one day. I just remember him asking, "Hey, how many square feet is this building?" And I bought the building, 7-8 years ago, and so I had in my mind about what I thought it was. And then Jeff paced off the building from the outside, and we have 3 floors here. So, I don't know what the building is, maybe 30 by 100, let's say. And so Jeff did that. And then he used Google Earth and took some measurements. And what was really interesting about his findings is that I think our building actually is right around 9,000 square feet, or just under that, I think, like 8,800 or something like that. And what was cool is Jeff, of all 3 methodologies, came up with pretty close to that number. They were all in the 8,500 to 9,500 square feet range. So when you're actually calculating man hours, you're talking 10 minutes difference across the board. So it proves to be pretty accurate. Like, all of these methods are fine. They all work. But even the simpler, easier ones, I think, end up producing the quality of data that you're looking for that's going to help you put together a bid. So that's it for this. I hope this is helpful. If you can go on our website, EliteBSC.com, we have lots of sales and bidding and estimating sort of articles and things on there, and resources. I've got a few videos on a couple of these things that I could send you. You could just shoot me an email, jordan@elitebsc.com. If there's ever any questions, anything we can help you with, we would love to do that. So you can reach out to us. Just go into our website, elitebsc.com. We'd love to have you as part of our elite group. And don't forget about the workshop, and particularly the live stream option for those of you that are not interested in traveling. I can assure you that it will be beneficial to your organization. So I hope this is helpful, and we'll see you next time. If you found the information in this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform that you're using. If you would like more resources or help to grow your cleaning company, head over to EliteBSC.com. We have loads of articles, videos, free tools, coaching options, and a lot more. If your company is greater than $500K in revenue and you want to take your learning experience to the next level, check out our mastermind group. You can learn more about that at EliteBSC.com/mastermind.